if the question does not specify the need for circular flow model, please use ADAS by default. Okay, because last week I think you all picked up on CCA, and some of you are quite interested to test it out. Okay, but don't use the simpler one. Okay, so the AD&AS model, number one, is simpler. Number two, it conveys more information. Okay, it brings across more information. And what do I mean by that? Okay, if I look at more information, it also tells us about general price level effects. Okay, not just GDP effects, but it tells us about your GPL as well. Okay, if you recall, we have GPL on the y-axis. Okay, whereas in your AD and AS diagram, sorry, in your circular flow diagram, you don't have this thing called GPL. Okay, so it tells us more information. That's why by default, use this. But does that mean what we did last week is only for that few CCA questions? Well, not really. The second point is having learned your multiplier process, okay? Having learned your multiplier process from the circular flow, we now have to apply it to your AD and AS model. Okay. We have to learn how to apply it to the AD and AS model, so it doesn't disappear along with circular flow. In other words, whether you are drawing your ADAS or your circular flow models, the multiplier is still necessary. It is still important rigor. Okay? So today's lesson is actually about rigor. Okay, so exactly what is rigor? Now I'll share more with you. Okay, so apply to the AD and AS model. This forms rigor. Okay. Yeah. So how do you explain it? Recall. I'm just gonna cut short. Multiplier, I'll just put K. You know it's K, right? Recall the K process. Last week, I had this higher G of 10 million or 100 million, right? Then you had higher C of 6 million. We had another increase in C of 3.6 million, and so on. Remember that? Now, do you remember what we call the first change in spending? It starts with an A. What do we call it? It is independent of anything that happened before it. So another word for independent is autonomous. You know we have autonomous vehicles now, right? Independent. So the first round is always autonomous. Okay, this one we need to be very clear. Subsequent rounds, the second, the third, the fourth, subsequent rounds are all induced. Okay, this is your multiplier process. So we're going to translate this to the AD and ES model. And then you go like, oh, but I haven't learned the AD and ES model in school. Well, we did this about 2 lessons back. You can always look back at the notes. Okay, even the lesson summary that I sent to all of you. Okay, so if you try to translate this to your AD and AS model, you have GPL, you have real GDP, you have AS that looks like this. Remember, the vertical section corresponds to your PPC. This is full employment. Full employment. Okay, you can't produce before that. You can produce beyond that. Still follow? Okay, very good. Now, if your AD was at vertical section, okay, of AS, there is no multiplier effect. So this is very interesting. If you start from here, there's no multiplier to speak of. Why? You can't produce anymore. Cannot produce further. You have maxed out how much you can produce. You can't produce further. How can you actually spend further? You can't. Okay? Because how much you produce is here. Why? And I'll just put FE for full employment. Okay? So if you're already here, you raise your AD further, sorry. No change in your real GDP. Stuck. Okay? So this is very important, and I'm going to put this in red. Okay? So when you're trying to explain the K process using ADAS model, we have to assume existence of spare capacity. Okay, it's important to assume this, that spare capacity exists. What is spare capacity? It means unutilized resources, which just means you're not at full employment. Resources are not fully employed. Okay. So we gotta start from here. So you can run your full course. This was 10 million, 6 million, 3.6 million, blah, 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 all the way from AD0 to AD1. Okay, so this is just a very quick view on how to integrate the multiplier process into AD and AS. Okay. Any questions so far? No?